G'day everyone! In this video we're going to go over the basic animations in the GT Title Designer. I'll show you how to create a basic lower third title from scratch and then animate the transition in and transition out of all of the different elements and layers. GT is the graphics engine that has been available since vMix 22 and allows for real-time high-performance graphics with no additional CPU usage. In order to create custom animated titles or use the custom animated titles created in the GT Title Designer in vMix, you will need to have vMix 4K or Pro. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a new title. Go to New and select the resolution that we're going to use. We use 1080 because that's what we're using today. So let's go ahead and create this title. What I'm going to do is create a rectangle to build my lower third. So I'm going to create an animated lower third today. I'm just going to go to Format to make sure I've got all this at the right size. I'm going to enter my number here, click Enter, and make sure that it's an exact size because I like things to be kind of exact. So I can drag this to the center to make sure that it's globally positioned in the center here, as you can see. I'm going to bring this up a bit because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle here and then a secondary rectangle that's going to pop out underneath as a transition in and then a transition out. So I've got that positioned in the center where I want it to be. Now what I'm going to do is I could also right click and align and set the center that way by going here. But now I'm going to edit the fill, so I don't want it to be bright red. So I'm going to click Edit Fill. I could also use the menus up the top here. So I'm going to choose a color. Actually, I'm going to choose a gradient. So I'm going to choose a color first. So I'm going to work on that blue color. Then I'm going to go in this gradient here. So I'm going to select the second color of the gradient, make it a light blue. And then once you've selected your gradient, you click Apply. Now, if you've worked with gradients before, you can select here and you can add different stops to add different colors to create nicer gradients. You can move these along or edit them manually. Click to remove. And you can change the way that it looks as well. So once you've got your gradient, if you wanted to use a gradient, then click Apply. I'm going to go OK down the bottom. So I have my gradient here set up for rectangle 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually change this. I'm going to call this blue rectangle. And so now we've got that named and that's almost good to go. So what I can do is go to effects now. I could skew it if I wanted to. I could make it look a little bit cooler. But I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm actually going to go to the Format tab and make it a rounded rectangle by changing the radius here. So I'm going to make these 40. That will put an angle on the edges. So as you can see now, it's a rounded rectangle. And I think that's about it that I want to do for this particular rectangle. So now I want to add some text. So I'm going to go to the text box. I'm going to create a text box in here. Now I'll right click this to make sure that it's centered as well. And let's go to the home and let's start making changes. So now I'm going to make changes to this text here. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it in the middle. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to make it much larger. And I'm going to change the fill color. So now I've got my text the way that I want it. So I'm actually just going to edit this text here with a cool name, like Tim. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make this name as well. So I know that when I go back to vMix, the name is where is the top layer here for where I've got Tim. Okay, so now I've got name and the rectangle. Now, one of the things you'll notice, like I can use this name here and I can make sure that it's in the center of the thing, and I can line it up with this rectangle, but I can't actually center it in the rectangle. So what I want to do is I want to create a group so that I can center everything in the one group layer. So I'm going to hit Control or Shift and select both of these layers, right click, and then go to Create Group. Now you notice that the group that's been created is now the size of the rectangle. So now I can maneuver everything within that rectangle properly. So I right click on this text now, align center, and then align middle. So that's actually just aligning it in the layer now. You'll notice that layer 1 is still the first layer that we had, which is the full canvas size, but now layer 2 is just within this particular layer with the rectangle and the text. All right, so now I need to create a second rectangle. So I'm going to go back to layer 1 and I'm going to select the rectangle and then I'm going to create a rectangle down here. Now you notice that the little title there has appeared, so I can choose to remove this title just by clicking the eye here so I can't see it, or I could have moved it to the top. I can move the layer up, so now this layer is kind of above this one. Now what I'm going to do is make sure that's in the center. Now that's a little bit outside of the safe area, Let's see what size it is. We'll make this exactly 100. And we can align up. So you notice that we've got the alignment there still with that other rectangle in the layer. So I can actually make sure that that's connected properly. And then it's aligned in the center as well. So it's got the align lock with the elements and also the global center. Now I want to change the color of this. So I'm just going to edit this. I'm going to make it the color of the bottom. No, that's not going to work. I'm going to make it white. That'll probably work best. Yep, so it'll match the color of the text. All right, so now I need to add some text to this one. I'm going to create a text box like so. I'll align this in the global center, and then I'll go to work on this one. What color? We can make it this. Yeah, that'll work. Make it a bit bolder. Make sure it's in the center and middle. And there we go for the text. Now I can go ahead and change this text here. So now I've got my title. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this text box to title so I know what that's going to be when I go to vMix. So I'm just going to label this rectangle as well to white rectangle. Whoops. All right, so now I've got these. Now I want to make sure that this text is also centered in this rectangle as well. So I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to right click and click create group. So you notice that now we have layer 3. We still have layer 1. We can probably move this down to the bottom. So now we have layer 1, which is the canvas, and layer 3 is the max size of this particular, these elements. So now I can click on the text and make sure that everything is aligned properly. So yeah, so now it's in the middle of that area. Now one thing to keep in mind is if you try and add things like go to here and try and add a rectangle, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have to make sure that because this layer is now confined to this area, if you're going to add new content, you have to add it within this layer. So it's usually best to create the layer once you know you've got all of your content ready for that particular layer. So I can go back to layer 1, and because the layer 1 is the full canvas size, I can go ahead and create more content here and then potentially create more layers that way as well. So I'm just going to delete all of this stuff. Okay, so now we have layer 2 and layer 3. So I'm going to name these. I'm going to call this name layer. And I'm going to call this title layer. And so now I've got all of my layers ready to go for the transition. All right, so now we need to work out what we want to do with these transitions and how we want it to look. So now I'm going to show you how to do animations on these transitions. So transition in and transition out. So what I really want to do is make this top rectangle appear with the text, and then I want to make the bottom rectangle appear a little bit later on. So what I can do is actually set the layer to have its own transition. So if I just wanted to do the entire layer, for example, if I wanted to fade in a layer, I can do that all together. So it's all of the elements will transition in together. So over here, you'll see this is the transition area for animation. So I can select transition in if that's what I want to work on. I've got the playback here. I've got pause, play, in and out. I've also got this on the right-hand side here. And I can also press the home key if I wanted to play everything in and out. So this is the animations board here. So we have a bunch of different transitions that you can use. So bounce will bounce in. Image sequences are for like PNG images. Reveal will reveal something. Zoom fade, again, they kind of do what they're going to say. It will zoom in and fade at the same time. Expand will kind of expand the entire element out. Fade will do a normal fade. Fly in will move in from one of the angles that you want it to use. Hidden will allow you to kind of remove something completely. Rotate will spin it around, scroll and zoom. So those are the different transitions. Probably best if you play around with to see what they all do. Now basically what I can do is for this whole layer here, I could set a transition for the whole layer. So I could select fade, and then over here you'll see the timing. So I can choose how long it takes for it to start. So typically if it's going to be the first transition, you want the delay to be 0. So when you hit that in button, this will be the first thing that happens. You can choose the duration. So I'm going to go 0.5, which is 0.5 of a second, and I can choose the style. So linear will be a smooth speed, cubic in and out, easing in, easing out. So easing in will go fast, and then it will go to a normal speed. Easing out will go slow and then speed up, and bounce in and bounce out will do those bounce transition effects. Okay, so what I'm going to do basically is just fade in the name layer 1 when I transition in. So I'm going to hit the button here, and that's going to, as you can see, transition everything in together. Now I could do the same with the title layer underneath. I could maybe do this, I can do this as a fade as well. I can add a bit of a delay to it. So the first one took half a second to have the duration. So I'm going to use the same delay. So when the fade finishes on the top one, it will then start the second one. So we'll try this now. So as you can see with the name layer, it started straight away because there was no delay. It went for half a second and then it faded up like so. So that's faded up. And then on the second layer, we waited half a second. So the top one would appear, and then we made the second one appear. So that's how you would animate the layers. Now, sometimes you want multiple things to be happening. So you've got your layer selected, but you want the text to appear after the box or something. So now I'm going to show you how to set that up. So I'm just going to go to none here. It's important if you're not using that transition to use none, otherwise you'll get confused and you'll be like, where are these transitions coming from? You can always check where the transitions are by clicking this here. It will show all of the animations you've got set up on the title. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this rectangle here, and I'm going to transition just the rectangle in first, and then do the text, and then do the other rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fade this one in. So the blue rectangle will fade. We'll make it a 0.5 here. And so that's the first thing that will happen, will be this blue rectangle will fade. So we'll try this now. So there we go. That's going to fade up. So then what we want to do is now we need to line up the name. So for the first one, because we took a duration of 0.5 and we want the name to start after the rectangles appeared, what we're going to do is I'm going to fly this in from the top, and I'm going to set a delay to 0.5 so that it's only going to happen after the rectangles appeared. I'll make this 0.5 as well. So basically what this is going to do is going to fly in from the top of the layer here and appear after 0.5 of a second. So that's now what we've got set up. So we've got the rectangle fades up, then the name slides in from the top of the layer. Now you notice that before, if you set up a layer transition for the entire layer, it's going to come from, like say we set a bounced or a fly in, it's actually going to come from the edge of the canvas. But because we're working within the layer, the transitions underneath this layer, it's going to be within the layer. So the fly transition will only be from the top of this layer, it won't be from the edges. All right, so now we've got those two. Now we need to set up the bottom one. So we'll go to the white rectangle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a reveal. So I'm going to reveal from the top. Now I'm going to set a delay of 1 second. So we're adding up the transition for the blue rectangle, which was 0.5. The name was 0.5. And so now we're going to do the white rectangle, which will be a delay of 0.5. And I'll make this duration 0.5 here too. It's going to come down from the top. So what this is going to do is reveal this white box from the top. Okay, so there we've got that, and now we just need to do the title. So what do we want to do for this? Probably we can do something cool. We'll go a reveal. So what we'll do is reveal this from the center. Now what was the delay? It should be 1.5 if we add all those up. Make the duration, we'll make this 0.4. Whoops, we'll make it 0.4. A little bit different. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a reveal from the center. And then we're going to select the x-axis. So what that's going to do is going to reveal out from the center. So let's try it out. So now that's how we set up a transition in for all of these different elements. So we have 2 layers, but then each of the elements are animated differently on those underneath those layers. So that's what we've got set up. So another cool thing that we can do is that we can actually have multiple transitions. So you notice here we've got the transition in, but then we also have 3 levels here. So we can set different levels for these animations. So the first one you notice is green, which means it has a fade transition. So if it's green, it means it's got an animation on it. Again, if you want to check to see whether there's any animations, you can click that button there. Okay, so what I can do now is I can add a second transition to it. So I'm going to select the second layer here, and then I'm going to click rotate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's just make it spin on its axis like that. So basically what it's going to do, the first layer will, it's set to fade at a 0.5 duration. It's got no delay on it. And the second one is set up the same as well. So what it's going to do now is it's going to combine them because it's using the same duration. So it's going to fade and rotate at the same time for this blue rectangle. Why you'd want to do this, I don't know, but this is something that you can do. So there you go. That's setting them up at the exact same time. Now we can also delay this. So for example, I wanted to rotate this, later on. So I could set a 3-second delay on this. And then what it's going to do is it's going to fade in like it normally should. So here it's going to fade in at a 0.5 duration. But then after 3 seconds, it's actually going to then rotate for some reason. So yeah, that's how you can set multiple things. You can set 3 levels on them. You can do that for all of the transitions if you wanted to. So yeah, that's something that you can do with the transitions. Now I'm going to show you how to transition out. So in order to transition out, you need to select that from the menu here. Now, typically what I like to do is do the layer. So I like to transition out for the entire layer. It just makes the timing a whole lot easier. And typically when you're transitioning out, you don't really want the same number of elements and all kinds of crazy things happening. You just want to get it out of there. All right, so what you can do is, what I'm going to do is set up this name layer. So basically, actually I'll set up the title layer. So what I want the title layer to do is to go back up, unreveal itself basically. So I've selected the title layer here and I'll make sure that I select transition out here. Then I'm going to select reveal and I'm going to make it reveal this way. So I don't want the duration to be too long. I don't want there to be any delay on it because I want it to happen first. So now I'm going to press this and then it's going to reveal. So you notice that the entire layer revealed or unrevealed itself back up to the top when I pressed that. So that included everything in there. So I didn't have to do the title and the rectangle separately. I can do the entire layer. So now for the top layer, what I want to do is transition that out as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with reveal, but I'm going to set it to the axis reveal. So like we did the text before, we're going to make this unreveal itself. Now what I probably should have done is added a bit of a delay on that so that it didn't happen at the same time. So we'll go with a 0.5 delay. So there we go. That's how we transition out. So we've got that all done and it should be good to go. Okay, so that's how you set up a basic transition in and transition out for either your layer or the elements on the layer. And so now we're going to save it and add it to vMix. I'm going to go to File, Save, let's call this something. Save that. All right, so now we just go to Add Input, go to Title, and then if you watch the other tutorial, you noted that if you go to the Recent tab, anything that you've saved recently in the GT Title Designer will actually appear here. So we can select it just from this menu, or you can browse for it as well. So here, as you remember from before, we called this layer title and that name. So what I could actually do is, to make it a little bit easier to make more sense, what I can actually do now is go back here and just move these layers. So I've got the name layer up the top and then the title layer underneath. So when I go to vMix, name will be up the top, title will be there. So now we just need to make sure that we save this. And then I'll go back to vMix. We'll right click on it to reload it. And now we'll right click to title editor. So now we've got name up the top and then title. So that's right and good to go. Now, in order to transition this in, we can use one of the overlay channels. So if we go to overlay, now what I like to do is to have cut here. So if I use cut as the transition for my overlay, it means that it's going to use all of the transitions as they should be in the GT Title Designer. If I make it anything else, like if I made it a fly, vMix is going to try and fly it in at the same time as doing as the other transitions, which is, if you've gone to the effort of creating those transitions, it's not worth doing this in here. So I usually set it to cut here for my transition. I'm just going to add a video so you can see what it looks like. Let's cut to this one here. And now I'm just going to overlay this. And as you can see, it fades in and does all the things we want it to do. And then if we want to transition out, we just press it again. And there we go. So that is how you create animated titles in vMix, doing a simple transition in and a transition out. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to send us an email via the contact form on vmix.com, as it's super hard to answer YouTube comments with technical answers. So yeah, check that out. Check out our website, vmix.com. If you want to know a little bit more about the other transitions and more advanced things for the GT Title Designer, stick around and check out some of the other videos in this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. Click to watch another exciting vMix video or head to vmix.com for a free 60-day trial. See you later.